Hey besties, welcome back to the channel. I'm back. I finally had the energy today to film this video, and I've had this sitting in my notes forever, you guys. I watched this movie back in July. I think when it first came out, it came out in July. I watched it then, but things just kept coming up and I did not have time to talk about it. But we are going to talk about it today, and as you can tell by the title, I'm talking about They Cloned Tyrone. With everything that's been going on with Jamie Foxx and everybody trying to figure out if they cloned him or not, it's just very convenient to me that they released this movie now, right? It's like they had it in the vault, like they were waiting for this to happen to put it out, because I believe they filmed this back during back in 2020. Now the film is ready, and I know it takes about 2 years, 3 years, sometimes however many years. Honestly, just things happen and movies come out later, but this seems very strategically planned to me, and even down to the replicas that they used. We'll get into all of that later. I have about 3 pages of notes because I watched this movie so many times. I just kept finding out all this new information and I'm like, this is crazy. So with that being said, make sure you got your wine, your water, or your rolling tray, or whatever you need to tune in with me. And now we can get into this video. Who are you to close off Earth? For legal reasons, if any kids are watching, you're right now. So if it wasn't already clear by every other video I've ever made, there's going to be a lot of spoilers here. Just basically retelling the movie. So the movie starts off and the opening scene is this zoom out of a white man's face with these blue eyes overlooking the black men that are in front of this store where the poster is, right? It's holding a can of lemonade or something, and it said, "Keep them smiling." That already was foreshadowing the surveillance and the brainwashing that was about to happen throughout this entire movie. If you saw it, then you know what we find out later on, and we'll get there. These men that are in front of the store in the opening scene, they're having a conversation about seeing people that look exactly like Michael Jackson and Tupac, around the way. One of the guys was like, if Michael Jackson's down at the Piggly Wiggly, why I ain't seen him? And the guy was like, because he's black now. And again, something that we'll get into a little bit later, but they just brush it right off. They slip right past that. And I know a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, it's satire, they're just playing on people always saying that Tupac's alive and Michael Jackson's still alive. We know, but what if they really are? Or what if they were cloned? What if they are living their lives somewhere on an island? We don't know. We really don't know. But I just feel like this was another nod to how possible this really is when you, especially the further we get into the movie. Back to the movie. It's taking place in this place called the Glen. There's no other information about where they are. We don't know what time period they're in, because you have talks about cryptocurrency. You got people just like actual pimps. We have dudes that look like they from the current South, then the other dudes that look like they back in 2003. There was flip phones, but then there was also smartphones. There's so much going on. You can tell that this was an experimental place. It was given 70s blaxploitation film, but it also felt very modern. This whole place was basically a fever dream. So the movie starts off with our main character, Fontaine. We basically follow him along for his daily routine. We see him pick up this young boy in the neighborhood, and he gives him information on what other people are doing, other drug dealers, other hoodlums. We see him in the car with Fontaine, and he pulls up on one of the guys who's on a corner that Fontaine felt like he was not supposed to be on, so he him in the leg. And we already start to see the type of person that Fontaine is, what his role is in the neighborhood, right? After this, he goes to look for Jamie Foxx, and we see Jamie and Yo-Yo, which is one of the hoes, or Jamie's a pimp. We see them having an argument, and she says that she's ready to retire and she wants to invest in cryptocurrency, and she's gonna get out the Glen. That off rip was red flags to me. It just shows you how cryptocurrency is another rabbit hole in itself, and a lot of people think that that's their out, sketchy things that work for some people. They sell it to you to keep you on this hamster wheel, and the way she was saying it, it's sounded like an MLM scheme, it was all in the tone of that scene. So Yo-Yo ends up leaving. Fontaine is walking up as she's going, and he pulls up on Jamie, takes the money that he owes him, and leaves. As he's leaving, he gets inside the car, and they up his car like 50 Cent. Fontaine was done. So like I'm shocked. Like this is the beginning of the movie. We just got here. Like we're just getting our feet wet and the main character's killed. So I'm like, okay. And then they said his name was Fontaine, so I'm like, he's not Tyrone. Y'all know I say this in every movie review. I watch movies so that I can hear the title of the movie or the show inside of what I'm watching. And this whole movie, I literally spent this whole movie waiting to hear them say they cloned Tyrone or to figure out who the hell Tyrone was. After they Fontaine, they skip on over to the next morning. He wakes up in his bed like nothing happened. And I'm like, is this Groundhog Day? Like, what are we doing right now? We see him follow the same routine that he followed the previous day, and it feels like he's stuck in a time loop. That's what we're thinking. We see him go to the store, get his drink, get his lottery ticket. And the lottery ticket is another thing keeping people in the same hamster wheel. People go and play them numbers every single day, do them scratch offs, do all that stuff without even knowing if they're ever going to be reimbursed for that, just out of the chance that they might win the lottery. And how do we know who really wins the lottery? Like, how do we know they don't just give it to certain people just to keep people going? Like, I don't know. I've never been big on gambling. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that was never one of my things. I've always felt iffy when it comes to the lottery. Just something about it just feels off to me. And they always have, like, you know, the lottery things in the hood too. Like, you're selling this dream to poor people that they'll one day be rich off this lump sum of money. And then they don't even talk about all the taxes and all the stuff they take out too, so you don't even get that amount that they're promising you. It's so weird. It's a nasty game. And this movie shed light on so much. And then there's like signs outside of the store, like with the cigarette signs, and then they have like a jazz player, like get the jazz sound. Like they're promoting people, like come smoke these cigarettes so that you can get the sound of a jazz musician. Like what? Promoting this liquor, like that's the stuff that they're selling at stores, that's stuff that they're pushing, you know? So also in the same store, there's a missing poster of the girl that we saw in the opening scene. There's a girl that gets out the car while the guys are talking about Michael Jackson and Tupac, and she walks into the store. We never see her again, but she's on the missing posters, and then we also see her underground at some point later. So while we're following Fontaine on his second loop, a black van pulls up and snatches a man who's walking down the street. It looks like he's been and I'm torn between if it was another clone of Fontaine or if it was just another thug in the neighborhood that got into something, because I feel like they already took his body if he ended up in his bed, right? So maybe that was somebody else, but they snatched up the person, or maybe he escaped. He didn't really die, but they still need to take his body. But I was kind of caught between if it was him looking at himself or just someone else and then saw him get snatched. So comment below if you do know the actual answer, or whatever you speculated from it too. Let's talk about it. So outside the liquor store, there's this old drunk man. His name is Frog. He's just like reciting different phrases and words and stuff. He's like, it's in the water, young blood. Straighter is greater. And then when the truck came to snatch up the man who was walking down the street, Frog said, off to see the wizard again. And he's talking about the people that are in the labs creating clones. But of course, we don't know that yet. But it's these little things that it's such a good movie that you have to go back and rewatch it after you watch it and then rewatch it again that time. Like you can't just watch it once. Like I was not able to watch this one time. And his name is Frog. Spiritually, frogs represent ancient wisdom and knowledge. So that's another thing, because Frog is definitely a seer. He sees and knows everything that's happening in the neighborhood, but because he's a drunk or, you know, whatever, people just write him off and think he's crazy. But even in real life, a lot of the time we see the unhoused people and drunks and people with addictions that spit the truth all day outside, make them seem crazy or like their words can't be trusted. And a lot of the time they have the most knowledge to give us, and people don't want to hear it because they're so bent on who the messenger is instead of listening to the message. So for a while, he's not even paying attention to anything that Frog says until later. We'll get there. Fontaine gets back home and he knocks on his mom's door. She never opens it. She never comes to the door. It takes her a while to respond to him. He asks her if she wants some food and she's like, no, I already ate. I'm watching my stories. That scene was like set up very weird, and it made me think about a lot of people that I know, like, you know, just in the hood, like just in life in general, but like specifically like people that I know in the hood that you find out about their home life and like their mom never leaves their room. They take care of all their siblings. They have all this responsibility and their mom is just locked up in the room, never opens that door, doing whatever they're doing, you know? And like you just never see their mother, but you know that she's there. Like she's just like a presence kind of just there because they take care of themselves. And that's what that scene made me think of. And this comes around full circle later. Like we said, Fontaine was on a loop, so he doesn't even remember yesterday. He goes back to Jamie to get the money that he already got yesterday before he was killed. And Jamie's like, are you a ghost? Like, you literally got shot last night. You were dead. He says, we gotta go get Yo-Yo because she literally saw you coming here yesterday, so let's go find her. They find Yo-Yo and she's like, are you Hollow Man? What's going on? Like, you were dead. She ends up telling him that she might know where the people who killed him are staying, whatever, because she's seen the car that pulled up after. Turns out that the car that she saw was one of the people who run the cloning site. So they're on their way. While they're in the car, a song starts playing on the radio and Jamie's like, yo, turn the song off because every time I hear it I get sleepy. And they all start yawning. And this really makes you think about the frequencies that they use inside the music and the movies and everything that they do to make us feel and react certain ways to things. And I talk about this all the time. And in my video, Hollyweird and their symbolism, this is what it looks like. I'll try to have a link below or something, but it's on my channel, so just, search for it. But I was talking about the frequencies in music and in art in general that they just put out to control how we feel. And people are like, that's not real, that's not a real thing. And it is. Like, it is. And they show us all the time how real this is. And people are just like, oh, but it's just funny, it's satire, it's conspiracy. Like, no, this is real life. Like, how many times have you been in the club or at a lounge or something, just out, a night out, and everything's fine, everybody's drinking, having a good time. A certain song comes on or a certain drink is poured and everybody is fighting, screaming, like just things start to get amped up. Like, you can just tell, like, it's different energy and different things. Like, the music that's playing at the brunch spot is not the music that's playing at the club. Like, I mean, sometimes it is, but you know what I mean? Like, they choose which sounds go with which occasion and how they want people to act. Like, there's music that's gonna make you laugh, there's music that's gonna make you groove in your seat, there's music that's gonna make you get up and twerk and actually dance and get on the floor. Like, there's different things, and that's why DJs even exist. Like, they're literally puppeteers, and everybody that's listening to what they're putting out is the puppets. Everybody can acknowledge that music can put them in a trance and make them feel this out-of-body experience and all these things, but when you explain why this is that you feel this way about the music, they're like, no, that's not possible. They pull up to the house that Yo-Yo told them about, and Fontaine notices the truck that kidnapped the guy earlier in front of the store. They break in, see that there's a whole staff room, lockers, and then they open one of the doors and it's a whole elevator. They take the elevator down and there's a lab. Working in the lab is this white man with an afro, and he's listening to Michael Jackson. Fontaine presses the guy up against the wall and he's like, you don't want to do this, we're everywhere. So, like, basically saying, like, even if you destroy this lab or destroy what we got going on here, there's more, like, so just let it go. And he tells Jamie to watch him, but right before he tells Jamie to do this, he was just testing out what he thought was cool. He's laughing like uncontrollably and he's just distracted, and he ends up shooting the guy after he hears a noise that startles him. He's like, where'd they find a white with a fro anyway? And like, this is like an ongoing like thing throughout the whole movie. Like, we keep seeing all of these guys that like either work at the liquor store, chicken spot, the corner store, like all these guys, like the workers, they're all white men with afros. Like, it's very weird. It's like, what, where are these people coming from? Fontaine ends up seeing his clone, so now he's hyper aware that he actually did die. They are not lying to him. What he saw earlier, everything is like starting to make sense and fall into place in his head. They leave. Fontaine ends up going back the next day with some dudes from the hood, and everything's gone. Of course, like, they always get rid of the evidence and they're gonna gaslight you and make it seem like you were crazy. If they get rid of the evidence of it, doesn't matter what people say. Like, it's hearsay. Like, everything is alleged at this point. So they go back to Jamie's house and they start an investigation based off of Yo-Yo's old Nancy Drew novels. In the middle of this, a commercial comes on the TV for fried chicken, and Jamie's like, you know what, while we're doing all this investigating, let's do it over some chicken. So they go to the food place that just showed up on the commercial. And how many times do we do that? We sit and watch mukbangs and we see them eating certain food, and now we're on Uber Eats ordering that same food to sit and watch and eat because we just got influenced by this commercial or this ad. So the program is working and they end up at the chicken joint. While they're eating and talking about their future plans, they start laughing and joking, and Fontaine is laughing at this point, and Jamie's like, all these years I've known you and I've never seen you laugh. And then he looks at Yo-Yo like, no, I've never seen Fontaine laugh. And he realizes, like, smacks the chicken down, like everybody put the chicken down because the chicken is making us laugh, like something is wrong. And then they realize like, wait, yeah, like everybody around them is laughing, like everybody inside the place is just laughing and smiling and joking. And it's like, what's funny? So Jamie realizes this is what happened to him last night when he was in the lab. So he's like, it's in the chicken. What I thought was smoke last night was actually laughing powder, and they put it in the chicken. But it's way deeper than just laughing powder. Yo-Yo makes her way to the manager's office inside the chicken place, and she swindles him into getting her some chicken. She's looking all around his office. She sees and hears the blueprints, the surveillance that they have over the Glen. We hear over this radio, they said 44 seconds after consumption of chicken, extreme laughter and agreeability. Let's say that again. 44 seconds after consumption of chicken, extreme laughter and agreeability. Why would they need the people to be agreeable? It makes me think about when they were handing out burgers and fries to everybody, and people really ate that up. Like, they went and got their free burger and fries. Like, I will never forgive y'all for that. And I will never forgive y'all for lining up for that chicken sandwich either at Popeyes. Like, that was another thing. And you're gonna tell me that they're not putting stuff inside of our food to make people act like that? Okay. Because even when this movie first came out, like, I was on Twitter talking about it, and people were like, oh, it's just a movie. Like, y'all always want to drag it. Y'all always want to take it somewhere. It's not just a movie. Like, can you not see? And this is what they bet on, and this is why they allow us to keep talking and allow us to keep speaking, because it's like we're wasting our breath because people don't hear us. Like, they don't care. No matter how many of us wake up and see what's going on, there's always going to be that group of people that are like, y'all are crazy. Where's the tinfoil hats? Nurse, she's free. Like, another thing we hear over the radio was 25% of the tested subjects experienced side effects of sporadic muscle contractions. And then they said, we'll report more on beta 3 later. So there are clear side effects of everything they're doing, but they don't care. And they're not letting people know why they're getting sick or why they're having muscle spasms or what's wrong with them. They're just putting stuff in the food, in the water. Like, we're gonna get into everything else that they're putting stuff in. They end up leaving there so that they can follow the people that are putting all the stuff in the food. And they end up at this hair salon. They see that they're putting the powder inside of the perms too. There's a woman inside the hair salon, and she's getting her hair done. She's complaining about her job and like feeling underappreciated and like just feeling like she's not making enough money, like she's doing too much, and maybe like, you know, she should just quit or like, you know, retire, all this. After the hairstylist starts putting the perm in her hair, like her whole energy changes, and she's like, oh, well, you know, maybe I'm just tripping. Like, I could go back to work. Like, and she just flipped. That's a lot of us. Like, we complain about things, but then we get up and we stay on the same path. We stay on that same cycle all the time. And I'm guilty of this too. Like, I'm not even just like pointing fingers and being like, oh, everybody, like, I'm so perfect. I never, like, no, like, I've been stuck on the same hamster wheel for a while, and I'm ready to get off too. And this movie opened up a lot for me, and it showed me how much the hood is really a trap. And like, I tell you all the time, like, I still live in the hood. Like, I don't know why people think, you know, YouTube is like this magic little world, and as soon as you pick up a camera, you get on YouTube, you become a famous millionaire or something. But no. Back to the hamster wheel. Jamie's back inside this van, and he's seeing that they have grape drink and they're dropping it off somewhere. And the fact that it's just titled grape drink, they just keep playing on. And I know black people made the movie, but it's just things that we also continue to keep alive, and they use it against us. Like, things that people think is our culture is really things that were put in place to keep us on the hamster wheel, to keep us down. And when you bring it up, people are like, nah, this is our culture. We gotta hold the hood down. We gotta hold the block down. None of this stuff means anything, bro. Like, I promise you. Like, I promise you, you will be long and gone. This will still be here, and you didn't hold anything down. Like, forgotten. Like, it's sad. Like, I just want people to do better. I want our people to want better and to do better. And I can't blame us, because they show us that we're so ignorant because we're programmed to be this way, literally. Like, they're placing these things strategically in our way to keep us 10 steps behind. And another thing that happens, as soon as Fontaine and Yo-Yo start getting some answers while they're at the hair salon, the enemy pulls up. We see that happen so many times in real life, like where you're on the path to do something good and here comes the enemy, and it's like, how did you know, like, to be here right now? It's designed this way. They don't want you to get out. There's always going to be something sent to make you rethink getting out of here. And that's why they call it the trap. Like everybody, oh, I'm trapping, I'm in a trap. You're literally stuck in a trap. And then people think that, oh, they make it and then they get into the music industry, right? And they're like, oh, nah, trapping and rapping and all this stuff got me here. And now you're just in another trap. Now you're still ran by them and you think you got all this money. You think you're being loaned everything. You're just getting fame. Now you can never work a regular job again because you got all this heat on you and everybody thinks that you're somebody. And that's why these people go crazy. A lot of them go broke. We see with the strikes right now, a lot of these people, actors, musicians alike, are not in the financial status that we once thought that they were. But everybody is working hard to get out of one trap and getting to another one. That's not real freedom. Because even if you get out, you only get to do what you want for so long. You get out, you become an artist, you think you're free, and then now you're one of the people being used on the airwaves to brainwash your people. Something we see inside the hair salon on the perm boxes themselves, it says straighter is greater. That goes back to Frog earlier telling Fontaine straighter is greater when he was outside the store. And this is why I said Frog is a seer and he sees everything that's happening around the neighborhood. People think he's just like reciting random words and he's actually putting them on game. So this makes Fontaine think back to Frog and he goes to go ask him like, hey Frog, like you were saying straighter is greater, like what does it mean? And Frog was like, it means in your head, by your head, and under your head, in the land of the blind. And he's like, what? Stop talking in riddles. He's like, you gotta go to the last stop on the train. Where does everybody go to get answers?
Well, he looks at me and I look at him and he looks at me.
Oh, like church. He's like, but Frog, there's a bunch of churches. Like, how do we know which church? And he's like, when you're trying to get out of Babylon, where else you gonna go? They end up at Mount Zion Church. Babylon is depicted as a mighty city throughout the Bible scripture, and it was used by God in judgment upon other nations. And Mount Zion was the highest point in ancient Jerusalem. I feel like everything always ends up with a Bible quote, and like the Bible is really the key to cracking the matrix, and I don't feel like enough people see that. And not just the Bible, all of these religious texts are keys, like all of them. I don't care what anybody says. People are like, oh, mine is the best, my religion isn't that. Like all of them are keys, and once we all realize that everybody is saying the same thing and telling the same story just with different people and different names, things are going to be a lot clearer. So they end up at Mount Zion Church and the pastor is giving out the grape drink as the blood of Christ, the laced grape drink that's making the black people agreeable and happy. Yeah, this is how they kept the slaves in line. Like he said, where do you go when you need answers? Everybody turns to the church, turns to God, manipulating people, and then they keep you in that loop in the church. And that's why you got to talk to God yourself. I know we always talk about this, a lot of people don't have the inner monologue. You got to figure it out, because clearly this is a trap. And then you have the pastor saying, God wants obedience. It don't matter if your rent and light bills are due. It don't matter if your son got gunned down on a corner. Give it to God. They was drinking the Kool-Aid. I mean, the grape drink. The church is a cult. And of course, one of the secret lab sites was in the church. And we see now that it runs under the entire neighborhood. So there's just different locations throughout the entire Glen that leads to this underground lab that they have. And now that we're in the lab, we see different signs around, and one of the signs says, winning the race of the future. This is when I started thinking, like, they're trying to change a whole race. Like, they're trying to make black people agreeable, and from the DNA things, more white, right? Like, and then you think, oh, what's with all these white men with afros? What about Michael Jackson becoming white throughout our whole childhoods? Like there's, you start thinking about all these things that were playing throughout the whole movie. Like, we were talking about Michael Jackson. We are seeing that they want black people to be agreeable and white. While underground, they find out that this white powder is in all of our food. Well, their food. All of the food. It was their cereal, their milk, like everything. And then you hear him say, this is crazy, man, like what don't they control? And it cuts to a scene of this man recording a woman's phone conversation, and the girl's on the phone, you know, just like chatting to her friend, and there's this paper that they show him keeping track of what she's saying, and it says caller name Keisha, receiver name Shantae, and they have, it appears Keisha and Daquan have called it quits. Keisha claims that she'll never speak to Daquan, broke again. Then you hear Keisha say, girl, that's his calling right now, and then she clicks over to talk to him again to stay in the same loop. And they're keeping track of this, making, I think they made him call her to keep her stuck in that same loop. Like, that's how sick this is how deep it goes. They're controlling everything. They're listening to everything. And people think it's so far-fetched. Joan is awful, Black Mirror. Go watch my Black Mirror video I just did. They think it's so far-fetched for them to be tapping our phones and sending out specific things to us. Like, a lot of those people, when you are listening to sad music and you just went through a breakup and they can hear it through your phone, and then you start getting all these notifications for twin flames and all these things that keep you back in that toxic cycle of things, like, do not be fooled. Like, these people are agents. They are sent to cause mayhem and wreak havoc in your life, okay? Like, they really listen to our conversations and figure out how to keep us on a low vibrational cycle, and it's crazy. They're literally cloning everyone in the neighborhoods and testing different situations on them. And people always ask, like, oh, what would they get out of cloning this low budget rapper? What would they get out of cloning a drug dealer? What would they get out of exactly this? They get control. These are the people that you know that they're going to, you trust them to be them. So you have them in the neighborhood, you know that they're going to perpetuate the same cycles and stereotypes. Is what they were bred for. Like, then we see the girl from the missing posters, and we see that she's been forced into isolation and forced to watch programming on this screen, and they put these clamps in her eyes to force her eyes open so she can't look away, so she has to take in the programming. MK Ultra, I talked about this in my Black Widow video. Like, these are things that I've been talking about forever, and it's just like all back to back to back to back right in our faces. It's like, what else do I have to say? What else? In the next room in the underground bunker, we see them testing different songs over the radio to see how the people will react, and they put on a song called Kill a Mother, and the two dudes started fighting. Then they started playing I Need a Hug, and they calmed down and embraced, you know, one another. So clearly they can really make people do whatever they want through the music, the food, the drink. Like, it's sick. And this is what they're really doing. I don't care who the director is. I don't care what they said this was about. I don't care how many satire stamps they put on it. This stuff is real. These ideas don't come from nowhere. And yeah, they come from old ideas, but those ideas were still things that they knew were happening. Like, a lot of people was like talking about Undercover Brother and like all these other, and I'm like, yeah, I get it, but that all came from somewhere, you know that, right? Like, then, like, if that wasn't enough, like, just to see that all happening, Kiefer Sutherland comes out and literally says that they clone specific people from the hood over and over for specific reasons to keep the pieces of the game moving. Even now, everybody's following the same hairstyles, everybody's doing the same thing. Might not be as extreme for us right now, but we don't even know. You see, Fontaine woke up every day and don't know. But they don't even have to physically clone us at this point, because we're cloning ourselves. We're all following these trends, following after what's the hottest thing, what these rappers are doing, what these singers are doing. So all they have to do is influence us enough, and we'll do the work for them. Everybody will pick up this lingo, start talking like this, start dancing like this, start doing like that, because that's just what it is. Throughout all of this happening, the white DJ at the club, the white DJ, puts on a song that makes everybody start attack. Like, it literally like turned them into robots, and they started chasing Fontaine, Yo-Yo, and Slick. This was like the Matrix Resurrections video that I did. Again, I'm just referencing all my old videos, because everything that we saw is things that we've already talked about, right? Like, nobody was shocked seeing any of this, right? It was like when they turned the chips on and all the people in the Matrix to chase Neo and Trinity down. Finally, to get them to stop, we see Kiefer Sutherland, and he says Olympia Black. And so Fontaine tells him that he's torturing people, and he says, we're not torturing anybody, we're doing research. It's science for the greater good. And where have we heard this before? It's science, it's research. This is gonna help people in the future. Like, they use us like lab rats, and people eat it up and be like, oh no, we have to trust the scientists. Things have changed. Nothing has changed. They just get better at their games. They gave y'all burgers and fries, and people lined up and did it. And then he says, America was an experiment, a half-baked idea by Aristocratic ideologies, living in mansions built by slaves. No such thing as land of the free. I said that in my Lovecraft Country video. The American dream exists on the backs of slaves. Like, literally, the American dream only exists because of everything that was stolen. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard this quote. It's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe in it. And that hits me so hard every time, because it's so true. Like, it's sick. They sell people this dream Then he goes on to talk about how black and white people have no common ground, no dialogue, no peace. It can only work if black people are docile and free slaves by choice and just conform to whiteness over time. So they're doing all of these things to keep them low vibrational, to just test these things to see how far it go. But the long run, the thing is to get them to conform to whiteness, to change their hair, change their face, change their everything. And then he told Fontaine to just mind his business and do what you do best and look the other way. We're everywhere, there's nothing you can do about it, like the other guy said in the lab. It is what it is. So everybody goes back to their regular scheduled programming. Decided to go back to Yo-Yo's mom's house and like just hide out for a little while and just figure out their next moves, because they were not giving up on this. And Fontaine keeps trying to sneak out, and Yo-Yo's like, I understand what you're trying to do, I know that you're stuck in this loop, but I'm stuck in this same loop with you. Like, I'm down the street from the same house I grew up in. And I felt that, like, how many of us do leave and get out of our parents' house, but then you're only a few blocks down, like you're still in the same neighborhood, still in the same loop, still going to the same store, still seeing the same people, but you're out the house, you got your own. But do you really, like, you're still living this life that was curated for you? They end up just giving up on everything for a little while and just going back to their regular routines. And Fontaine is doing his scratch offs again. And Frog tells him, he said, you lose always, because it's literally designed that way. That's what I was saying earlier. Like, they're not going to give you that winning ticket. That's why I feel like there's strategically people picked out that they say that they received the win, and they move them places and they do all that stuff, because it's not designed for multiple people to win. It's just a grab to get people to keep giving the money. Y'all are the people funding the lotteries. Like, after that, he goes back home and he's trying to talk to his mom through the door, and she's giving like these basic generic, you know, answers, the same ones earlier. Can't open the door, we've never seen his mom through the whole thing. Finally, he breaks down the door and he sees that his mom was never in the room. It's just literally a cassette thing there playing different phrases back to her. Somebody's controlling it. They used his mom's likeness to keep him trapped there. None of it is real. Life doesn't really start until you get out of your matrix, and the matrix is the womb, the mother. So what if that is the matrix that we need to escape? Getting out of your immediate location. Like, there's people that have broken out the matrix, that moved to another country, they started a new life, broke generational curses. Like, that was them breaking out of their matrix. Everybody's matrix looks different, just like everybody's home is different, but your matrix is your womb. That's where you were born. I didn't have that written down anywhere. I don't know where that came from. That was just, thank you, Spirit. Throughout the movie, they keep showing us this obituary of like a young boy, looks like what we assume to be Fontaine's little brother. Fast forward to the end, finally they all pull together and devise a plan. I always say this, we are stronger together. Sooner everybody figures that out, the better everything will be. There's more of us than them. If everyone just pulls together and really decides, all right, we're not allowing them to put this stuff in our food anymore, brainwash us putting this stuff in our hair. The consumers run everything. If we don't consume, they can't push stuff out to us. And speaking of putting stuff in our hair, there's a scene where they have Yo-Yo tied up in the lab and they are perming her hair. They really think that this is seeping into her head and that she's becoming agreeable, and she takes off the wig and shows them that, like, we're smarter than you. And it also shows that they can never tell if it's our hair or if it's a wig. I just thought that was funny. I just wanted to mention that. Fontaine ends up being dragged into this room where we meet old Fontaine. So there's just a bunch of Fontaine clones running around, and that is because the lead geneticist of this whole program that's running is Fontaine himself. Oh yes, still no Tyrone. So the boy Ronnie, whose obituary we see throughout the movie, is actually the little brother of the real original Fontaine. He was killed by the police, and he said that Ronnie is the reason that he made a deal with the devil to help black people conform into whiteness, because he felt like if they would have seen his little brother in a different light, it could have saved him. If he was whiter, or, you know, if there wasn't a disconnect between blacks and whites, his brother would still be alive, basically. So he made it his life's mission to turn black people into white people. This is the movie. Like, this is the movie. Like, okay, they didn't want to wipe out the human race. They wanted to mix and change the DNA. Like, assimilation is better than annihilation. While he's telling him all of this, young Fontaine tells the older him, I think black people would be a little scared if they wake up one day with blonde hair and blue eyes. The older version of him says, That's why it's not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna happen over generations. That's why they put the perms, put certain things in our faces in the media. They're brainwashing. Because if I brainwash you, you're gonna go home and brainwash your kid. Your kid is gonna go to school and spread that. Like, it's all a game of telephone. They got it down to a T. Like, listen, the white men walking around with the afros, so you see them behind him where they start and then how they look. And right now they're clearly in the afro phase. They haven't gotten their hair down. He said that's been the hardest part. But yeah, long story short, Fontaine ends up using the code Olympia Black from earlier that he heard. He got the other clone Fontaine to kill OG Fontaine, and he got out of there. They escaped. They saved the city. They saved the Glen. You see all of these naked people walking around, which are the clones. They helped all the clones escape. And it was such a short scene of Jamie Foxx having a clone that if you see the extensive work they did on the clones, it was interesting. It seems like they had something to tell us, and I'm gonna put it here. And I'm like, what if all these naked people we've been seeing are people escaped like from the clone factories or like just from labs in general? After we see all the clones being released, we cut to what looks like LA now, and we see another Fontaine again, but this time he has braids. He's doing a similar routine, but it's in LA. It's a different version. And we see him eating the same Captain Crunch that we saw them destroying in the lab in the Glen. So it clearly has that powdered poison in it. And him and his friends are all sitting in the living room eating the cereal. We see the news of the Glen cloning situation being exposed, and his friends look at the TV and say, "Ain't that true, Tyrone?" Finally, I was waiting, like, who the hell is Tyrone? But that was the whole, like, they had every opportunity to be like, yo, they cloned Tyrone. I was waiting for that, and that blew mine. But, so you see how they said we're everywhere, and that wherever the Glen was where they were? What if it's the same for us? Like, you know, everybody's like, oh, you have doppelgangers. Everybody has at least 4 to 6, 7 doppelgangers. Y'all think that's normal? It's a little suspect. Like, what if the doppelgangers aren't really doppelgangers? What if they're clones? Like, what if we all have clones running around and they gaslight us and say, oh no, they're just doppelgangers. They're just people that look exactly like you, are the same height as you, that have the same... No. So that was They Clone Tyrone. That was all my thoughts about it. I hope you guys loved it. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't really have much else to say. We are still on the road to 50K. I'm so excited. And as you guys see, I got my streaming set up. I'm ready to be a Twitch girly. It's just time to just do it. We're going live. If you're not following my Twitch, the link will be in the description. So with all that being said, I love you guys. I will see you in my next video.